Welcome to the Scoot on the Air YouTube channel. I'm Scoot. I had an interesting show today on WWL, and I want to kind of carry that over into the YouTube channel tonight. It was a big topic of discussion today, really around the country. It was about the House Select Committee hearings into what happened on January the 6th. I wrote a blog for our website. It's at WWL.com. It's on the Scoot page there. And it's titled America's Moment of Truth. And that's the way I see this moment with the hearings going on. I see this as a moment of truth. You know, we can disagree. Political debate, disagreement has been part of this country since its inception. And, you know, I remember as a really young preteen, I guess, teenager, whatever, I was really young at the time. But, you know, I remember 1964. I remember overhearing the controversy over the Republican Barry Goldwater versus Democrat Lyndon Johnson. There was a lot of controversy there. In 1992, I remember the controversy of Bill Clinton beating Republican incumbent George H. Walker Bush. In fact, I did my radio show on WWL from the Mayflower Hotel in Washington, D.C. on Bill Clinton's inauguration day in January of 1993. And I remember Republicans coming on the show and actually expressing the concern that America as we know it is over. So, look, political controversy has been, you know, part of this country from the beginning. But what was really interesting today, and I want to share with you a couple of the calls and texts that I got from listeners. In talking about all of this, there were those who said, there were those who immediately said, well, what about the riots last summer? Okay, what about the riots last summer? I can't speak for everybody in the media, but I denounced the riots, said they were terrible. Nobody should burn anything. Nobody should attack anybody. And if you want to have a protest, have a protest. But, you know, you can't like go crazy and burn shit, you know? So like I denounced that. But these are the diversionary tactics of people who are desperate to be right. And the problem is, and what I noticed in talking about this again today, and I'm really trying on my show to stay away from just the most bitter right left hateful debates, because you're not going to change anybody's mind. But I do think this is an interesting moment of truth for America, because we have to recognize the truth, and there are certain factual truths about January 6th that a lot of people do not want to recognize. And then there are those who don't want to admit that it happened. They know it happened, but they can't bring themselves to talk about it happening. They can't bring themselves to admit how horrible it was. They can't even bring themselves to admit that those were Trump supporters. They were Trump extremists, and they don't represent all Trump supporters, all conservatives, or all Republicans. So, I can be honest about that. But the temptation is to divert from the topic because it's so horrible and they can't really defend it. And so in part, they say things like, well, what about the riots? It's the whataboutism. You know, people brought up the riots last summer. One guy called the show and said, there are people like me who are glad January 6th happened because of the riots, because it's about time we did that. He was talking about white people. He was talking about it's our turn to fucking riot. Really? That's your argument? And as bad as the riots were, the step that wasn't there that is part of the insurrection January the 6th is the idea that this was a group of Americans that physically and violently attacked our Capitol and attacked police for the purpose of disrupting the democratic process. So history will show that there was not a peaceful transfer of power in 2021 when Donald Trump lost. And by the way, Donald Trump lost. I had a guy, call the show today and said, "Yeah, well, what about the 238,000 votes in Pennsylvania that suddenly came in? Oh, there were 238,000 more votes than people registered to vote, and they all were for Biden. What about that?" And I said, "Well, how do you know? Where did you hear that?" "Oh, I heard it from President Trump." I mean, at that point, I've got to just fucking laugh because it's comedy, really. I mean, you're going to believe something a politician tells you? It's bullshit. And then, there were those who say, well, what about Nancy Pelosi? Nancy Pelosi, why didn't she do more? I don't know. Could Nancy Pelosi have done more? Maybe so. Well, okay, let's investigate that. But that doesn't take away from what transpired and what happened. It doesn't take away from the facts of the day. Now, do I expect this House panel and these politicians to come up with the real truth? I hope so, but I'm not that optimistic because it's all politicized. But there are certain things that are factual. And until we as Americans come together and agree on the facts, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. And so you can have your opinions. Here's one other note. And then there were texts where you shouldn't be talking about this. There are more important things to talk about. But these were the same, poor bastards that were calling up, why don't I talk about Benghazi and the investigation every day? So again, it's total bullshit. And we can disagree. And man, you can hate Biden, you can love Trump if you want to, but you cannot, if you're a patriotic American, you cannot ignore the facts of what happened. In the blog that I wrote for our website, wwl.com, it's also posted on the Scoot on the Air Facebook page. I write, the political divide has been part of America since its inception. That's how I close it out. But the political divide is now fueled by hate, and the desire to be right is more important than recognizing the truth. We can disagree, but our democracy faces a new threat from within our borders. That threat comes in the form of ignoring what is true and creating false facts to support a desired narrative of what happened. In fact, it is the fact that a violent group of Americans attacked the Capitol on January the 6th with the intent of stopping the democratic process. During that attack, law enforcement officers were threatened, injured, degraded by a group that professes to support law enforcement. They did not support law enforcement. That's a fact. That's not my opinion. Their actions and their goal of blocking the democratic process, which included violent words about hanging Vice President Mike Pence, a Republican, cannot be ignored. And it is a fact that the violent group was made up of Trump extremists. They are Trump supporters. However, they don't represent all Trump supporters and all Republicans and all conservatives. As time puts the events of January 6th into perspective, there should be a trend toward accepting the truth of what happened, even if there's tacit distancing from the rhetoric of Donald Trump. I think over time, I think these moments are going to cause an erosion in the overwhelming support that some people give President Trump. I think that's going to erode over time. But this is a moment of truth for America, because we have to get to the point where we start recognizing facts. Let's disagree, but let's get back to understanding and realizing what the facts are. I'm Scoot. Thank you for joining me on the Scoot on the Air YouTube channel. I'm going to go on Facebook and Instagram, also Scoot on the Air, and do something else there. So if you haven't subscribed, I hope you will become a subscriber here to the YouTube channel. And if you do subscribe, we give you an alert every time we do something new. And there's a whole bunch of interesting videos. I mean, I talk about a lot of shit here. And sometimes I do interviews with people, and most often it's just it's a commentary. And I am registered independent, and I describe myself as a radical moderate. I'm a moderate not because I don't have opinions, but because I can't be described as a Republican or a Democrat or a liberal or a conservative, because I'm conservative on a lot of issues. I'm liberal on a lot of issues. And I refuse to feel like I have to be defined by just the right or the left. And I think there are more of me, people like me, than the right or the left ever wants to admit, because we're really the ones that determine the outcome of elections. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me here. And join me on my radio show on WWL, 870 AM, 105.3 FM. That's in New Orleans and throughout the Gulf South. Or download the app Audacy, AUDACY, and type in WWL.